It's your understanding that today this House is meeting in similar to a grand jury, is that right?
Yes, as I mentioned, I think it's very comparable to a grand jury in some ways. In other ways, it's possibly not. And the reason for that is because in past precedent, the House has accorded a greater level of due process in impeachment proceedings than you would normally see in a grand jury proceeding.
And in doing so, what is the standard of evidence in this body at this point in time?
Well, Mr. Dutton, my understanding is that by definition, the Texas rules of evidence do not apply to grand jury proceedings. I believe that's Texas Rule of Evidence 101 or 102. Right. They do not formally apply. So there certainly is evidence that can be admissible in a grand jury proceeding that is not necessarily admissible at trial. However, the Texas House has, in precedential authority, has always required that evidence used to impeach a public official, particularly a statewide public official, comply with the rules of evidence in place at that time. In other words, the normal rules for whether evidence would be admissible or inadmissible in a court of law in the state of Texas.
Would that mean a standard of probable cause standard, for example?
Well, as far as admissibility of evidence, I'm not sure probable cause is a factor, although it becomes a factor. As far as admissibility, I think the key is that the witness needs to have factual knowledge of the events to which he or she testifies. Right. In this case, we have no testimony from any witness who had factual knowledge of any relevant events that were relevant to the inquiry that is at hand. All information was second or even third-hand information. Now, in terms of probable cause, yes, I think that our level of consideration in this proceeding should rise at least to the level of probable cause. But the probable cause must be based on evidence and not innuendo or speculation or accusation. And so as a result of that, my concern is we have no evidence, absolutely no evidence in our record that would justify impeachment. Now, there may be a lot of evidence out there. There may be volumes of evidence that would justify impeachment, but we don't got it. We don't have it. It's not there. And I take this position seriously. We all took an oath, and that is I've got to perform my duties constitutionally. And as I see it, as I call it, as I perceive it, I can't issue or vote for impeachment based on the record that's presently before the House.
Well, but do you believe that most of the members in here know what probable cause means?
I think some do. Now, many members, as you are aware, are not lawyers, and some lawyers don't practice criminal law. I don't practice criminal law. But I think that we can all understand the concept that there is a very high bar, and there should be a high bar for impeachment. It's not something that we should do casually, not something that we should do just because we don't like somebody or don't approve of the job they've done in office or they didn't show up at a committee hearing. I think we have to set a bar that would incorporate probable cause, not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's for the Senate. But we do have a standard, a bar that must be met.
And as I was thinking about it, I was looking at the board up here where we typically light up the board voting on bills. Would that standard be higher than voting on a bill, for example?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because right now we're talking about a vote that will effectively remove a duly elected officer of the state of Texas, elected by a majority of the citizens of this state, from the office that he was elected to less than a year ago, really just about a little over a half year ago. And the public has an interest in that. They should have an interest in that. We are undoing what they did. Now, some people in here may have voted for General Paxton, some people may have voted against, but the majority of Texans voted for him. And this is not just something that affects the Texas House of Representatives. It affects every person in the state of Texas, every man, woman, and child, because this is a statewide elected official. And so we have to be very, very prudent and very, very careful.
Well, let me ask a question about there's a lot of talk been made about the whistleblower lawsuit. Do you know whether that was a lawsuit involving General Paxton personally or in his official capacity as Attorney General?
You know, Mr. Dutton, I've got to confess that up until all of this happened, I paid not as much attention to the Paxton legal proceedings as I probably should have. And so I'm not really aware of the allegations. I'm aware generally of the allegations, but not enough to answer your question.
Well, I guess the question I was getting to is that if he was sued in his official capacity, the state would be on the hook for any damages, whether they were by settlement or by trial. Is that right?
That would be, in the official capacity, that's my understanding, although I'm not an expert on that.
Right. So the last question I have is that when it comes to the members deciding whether to vote for or against this measure to impeach General Paxton, one of the things you raised a moment ago is whether or not his lawyers had ever had a chance to participate in the proceedings, right?
That's correct.
And sometimes in a grand jury, I know you don't practice criminal law, but sometimes in a grand jury, the grand jury may want to hear from the person who is the target of that grand jury. Are you aware of that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you know whether, and I know Chairman Leach just indicated he had invited General Paxton to his committee meetings, and I don't know what the nature of that was, but do you know whether he was invited today?
To my knowledge, he was not. Nothing in the record indicates that he was. And I also understand that he was not provided advance notice of the investigation, nor was he invited to produce any potentially exculpatory information or testimony. I really believe that at some point, when you have a statewide elected official, it's only right. I mean, it's only right to go to that official and say, look, we're getting ready to vote on a proposition to remove you from office. Now, if you've got anything that we need to see before we take that vote, you show it to us so we'll know what to do. That opportunity, to my knowledge, was never provided to General Paxton. Someone, I wasn't there, but apparently someone from his office asked to come speak to the committee and was denied that privilege.
Now, are all of the articles of impeachment, are they violations of the law?
I'm not sure I can answer that. Honestly, I've been going through those. We've had less than 48 hours. And I've tried 20 counts is a lot of counts in an indictment or an impeachment. And my problem has been trying to sort what passes as evidence, in other words, the hearsay within hearsay within hearsay, and try to tie it to each count. And I haven't been able to do it. And that's why I was hoping, as part of the presentation, we could have a little organization in terms of what the committee felt supported each of these counts. There must be something there, but I haven't been able to put it together. But once again, we get back, there is zero evidence, zero. And so we're not talking about evidence here.
If there were violations of the law that were determined to be the case against General Paxton, would the committee have a responsibility to refer that to the DA's office?
Absolutely, and that's another concern, is that I think we're all aware that there have been both federal and state investigations into allegations against General Paxton. As far as the whistleblower activities, I know there's been an investigation of that, but I'm not aware of any indictment that's been issued on that. I don't know if the investigation has been suspended or whether it's ongoing. I don't know, and I don't think anybody else really does.
And finally, do you know whether any of these allegations have been referred to a DA's office anywhere?
I'm sure some of them have.
Okay. All right. Thank
Although-
you, Mr. Speaker.